Look at how crazy this guy's energy recharge is. Watch this. Look at how insane this character is. You swap to your main DPS, do a bunch of autos, swap back to him. Boom, he already has his ult. And the cooldown's not even up yet. Hey, what's up guys? So I just finished testing Albedo on stream and oh my god, he's insane. This character is so much fun and he has the burst of Zhongli with way more energy recharge. His burst does a ton of damage and when you're attacking inside of his E, his field, you gain particles on Albedo even when you're attacking on another character on your DPS that doesn't have to be a Geo DPS. So I think this character is insane and we're going to be talking about why. Important information, in this video we're going to be talking about builds, weapons, how to play them, all that stuff. I'm going to be comparing them to Zhongli as well. And you guys should know most of my DPS showcase and all that stuff is with no food, nothing. But some clips are recorded with food and in like Abyss or whatever, just to see his max potential and compare it to other characters at their max potential. Right after this video is uploaded and all throughout the week I'm going to be streaming. Follow my Twitch if you guys want, it's in the description. But yeah, Albedo's a top tier support. I honestly believe he's insanely powerful and just so good and so fun. And we're going to talk about why and how to gear him and use him in this video. Hope you guys enjoy. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is why I think he's so good. First of all, his damage is pretty insane. If you look at his skill damage on his E, it's 183%, right? Not bad, but it does have a 4-second cooldown. And when you're attacking inside of it, it does a bunch of damage. So we're going to be talking about talents in another section, but the main thing is his ultimate does so much damage. Level 8, it does almost 600%, plus 115% per Fatal Blossom, and you can get 7 Fatal Blossoms. Granted, sometimes they don't always hit. Sometimes I get 2 or 3 on one target, or they'll hit different targets or whatever. But still, at max potential, that's 7 times 100, which is just obviously a ton of damage. When you compare this to Zhongli, obviously Zhongli has a bigger single number. That's why my crit on Zhongli is bigger than my crit on Albedo. However, you get a bunch more damage because of this Fatal Blossoms, and you get way more energy recharge. And his E is also a really good source of damage. All right, guys, let's talk about the artifact sets you want on Albedo. I personally am running a 2 Noblesse, 2 Petra, and I think that's the best set on him because the way you're supposed to play him, and we'll see this in the video, but the way you're supposed to be playing him is basically an alt bot. You run him as a Geo support that swaps in, uses his E, uses his alt, his Q, does a ton of damage, swaps out, and then swaps back in roughly 12 seconds later when he does have his ult back because of his insane energy recharge. The way this guy gets so many particles is just by attacking in your field, using your field, and just basically doing a ton of damage to multiple enemies, and you just get a ton of particles. Because of that, you're going to be spamming your elemental burst, and that's why I run a 2-piece Noblesse and a 2-piece Petra. If you guys don't know, Petra will give you that geo damage bonus, and if you do want to run them as a pure support, the 4 Petra isn't bad. It gives a lot of damage bonus to your main DPS, so 4-piece Petra is definitely a viable option. But overall, I like the 2 Noblesse as well for the extra damage. Also, if you're an early game player and you need an alternative, an energy recharge set just to give them even more recharge can be nice, and you can get some of these in the early game like Exiles and like Scholars. For the artifact stats, this character is a very similar role to Zhongli, whereas he's a burst support. That means you want a lot of burst damage. So crit rate and crit damage are the 2 stats you're going to prioritize, and energy recharge is also good too. Now defense isn't bad on this character, and I know a lot of people are going to be commenting, asking about defense, saying they run defense, all that stuff. I personally don't think defense is as good as attack because yes, you know, the scaling on your E is very nice for defense, but on your ultimate, it's not defense scaling, and this is where all your damage is coming from. It's really all your burst damage, and because of that, like sure, defense is fine as a substat, but I wouldn't go for a main stat defense at all. So yeah, those are for the substats. Also attack percent is nice too. So that's what you're going to be looking for your flower and your feather. For your Sands, attack percent is definitely the way to go. Now, granted, you can run an energy recharge Sands, but I think his recharge, for me in my comp, is good enough. Honestly, it's really good, especially against multiple enemies, especially if I run with Venti. Like, just Diluc auto-attacking in his field gives me so many particles. Also, you can run a Geo main DPS, and then you'll just get an insane amount of particles. So for me, I don't need recharge. For the Goblet, you definitely want Geo damage bonus. It's just better than anything else. Defense, attack, Goblets aren't even close to Geo damage. Geo damage is just way better. Now, for Goblets, I say this in every video, but you don't need good substats. I know mine are amazing, all right, I get it, but you don't need good substats on your Goblet. Just run Geo damage, and that's good enough. For Circlet, crit damage and crit rate are both really good. Personally, I want to run a crit rate one, but as you can see, I don't have any good crit rate ones for Petra. So I have a bit too much crit damage. If you guys do look at my attributes, you'll see I have not enough crit rate. So ideally, let's say I had a good crit rate piece, it would look something like this. It would be around 60 to 140, which could be better for sure, but is definitely a good start. All right, now let's talk about weapons. The very first thing I want to talk to you guys about is this new weapon that comes out and that as far as I'm concerned, is a free-to-play weapon because this event is free-to-play and does not require resin. So basically, you can get the Festering Desire, which is an energy recharge sword, and it has 10% base energy recharge. And on top of that, the effect is really good. 16% elemental skill damage is pretty good, especially with a crit rate increase. So the effect is good, and you have an energy recharge as your substat on your sword. So very, very good. Definitely a good free-to-play option, the best free-to-play option for Albedo. I would not recommend blacksmith swords over this. If for some reason you missed the event or whatever, you can run a Skyrider as a 3-star because it has energy recharge. But yeah, the event sword is very, very good. Now, I recommend an energy recharge sword, and the reason for that is because there isn't like a sword with an amazing crit rate or crit damage substat. Like, yes, there's the black sword, but energy recharge just enables you so much. It means that you have your ultimate on cooldown, and you don't even need energy recharge on your artifacts. You saw, I do have 1 or 2 artifacts with energy recharge as a substat, but I don't run it as a main stat because I have this sword that gives me 55%. Now, you might be thinking, oh, you're running a 5-star sword, that's why you have so much energy recharge. But that's not true. If you look, my level 70 sword, right, 70 versus 90, my 70 sacrificial, which is a 4-star, actually has about as much energy recharge. So what I'm trying to show here is these 4-star swords, the Favonius and the sacrificial, actually give more energy recharge than the Skyward Blade. And there's also that event sword that's a great option. So these 3 energy recharge swords, this, and the event one, are very, very good for Albedo. Basically, as I said, it enables you to just constantly spam your elemental burst and do a ton of damage. I don't think there are any real other swords worth talking about because like an energy recharge sword is just so much better than any other in my opinion that I wouldn't run something else. Okay, now we're going to talk about his abilities, his talents, and why I think this character is so good. One of the reasons is his E is actually good. Zhongli made up for his terrible E by being able to spam this massive ability if you have a Geo main DPS, giving him particles. Albedo, first of all, doesn't need that because he has better recharge, but his E isn't even bad. It's actually really good. It has a good amount of scaling on both attack and defense. Now, obviously, I am building him attack, and it does a bunch of different things. Yes, it does act like an elevator, which is pretty funny. I don't really use it for the elevator, but the main good thing about it is when an enemy takes damage, so when you're just attacking in the field, inside of Albedo's E, they'll take bonus AoE geo damage. Now, what this means, and I'll show you guys, if you press E, now the E does do damage on hit, right? You'll see 5,600. That's not nothing. When you swap, and let's say you're attacking with your main character, you see that bonus damage it's dealing? So as you can see when you're attacking, there's just these bonus geo numbers which are really, really good. Now, you obviously don't have to swap. You can get these bonus numbers on Albedo, but since he's a support character, what's really nice is you can just press your E, swap, and then you're dealing a bunch of geo damage and you're generating particles. So you can basically just constantly spam your elemental burst, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. Also, as it says here, transient blossoms are generated every 2 seconds, just something you should know. And also, yes, it does act like an elevator, and you can only have 1 of these out at a time, and it is a geo construct. So yeah, his elemental burst, which has a giant name, is very, very strong. Basically, it has 1 AoE hit, and then a bunch of other mini AoE hits, the 7 blossoms. So basically, you'll have 1 huge number, roughly 600% at level 8, but let's say you're low level, still like 500% scaling, and then you get a bunch of mini damages, and you can get up to 7 of these. I do say up to 7 because sometimes like not all of them will hit, or it'll go on like different enemies, or like sometimes it works weird, but you can do up to 7 times this number. On top of that, the energy cost is super, super low. It's 40, and the cooldown isn't that long. 12 seconds isn't that much. For comparison, Venti, who has a broken ultimate, has a longer cooldown and a higher energy cost. Something to note, and please remember this, you almost always want to use your E before your Q. So always use your elemental skill before your elemental burst, because basically if your E is on the field, if there is a solar isotoma, you will deal these 7 fatal blossoms, which is this bonus damage. So definitely want to have one out before using your elemental burst. In terms of his other talents, this is just really nice. Bonus damage to enemies that are below 50%, so just good. And then when you ascend them past 60, so 60 out of 70, you basically get an elemental mastery buff to your other party members. Constellation wise, I have none because I'm saving for Zhao, but if you guys do want to get constellations, his C1 gives him literally more particles, more energy regen, which is just really nice. And all the other ones do seem pretty okay. This one helps if you're building defense. And the last one, if you do get C6, it just gives you a nice bonus damage to your DPS. But I like making videos on C0 characters because I'd rather save my money than get constellations. All right, now let's talk about party setups. Since Albedo is Geo, he's very versatile, since the only elemental reaction you can proc is crystallized, and that's not too important, so obviously you can pair him with anything you want. The first thing I want to say is if you guys don't know, in 1.3 Geo will be buffed, making him even better. On top of that, the Abyss 12 floor is going to be changed to give a Geo damage buff instead of pyro damage, so Geo will be even better. However, Albedo is so good that even before the buffs he's insane, and after the buffs he's going to be even more broken. First thing you should know is if you run two Geo characters, you do get a elemental resonance of called Enduring Rock, and what this does is it basically just increases your attack damage by 15% when you're protected by a shield, which makes Crystallize better. You can proc the Crystallize reaction, pick up the shield, and you do 15% more, it increases 15% of your attack damage, which is very, very nice. Now, in terms of how you're going to build a party around Albedo, well, as I mentioned, he's versatile. I think he's a good support in pretty much any comp. I honestly can't think of a situation when he's bad. I think Albedo is also good in Geo teams because of how many particles are made in a Geo team with like Ningguang DPS, and you get the resonance. However, it isn't that necessary for him. Like, yes, it's really good, and I'll probably run Ningguang with my Albedo, but it isn't necessary, whereas with Zhongli, you kind of needed the particles that Ningguang generated for you. With Albedo, since his recharge is actually really good, you don't need to run him with Ningguang, but it is a good option if you want to. Another important thing to know about Ningguang with Albedo is that her wall, her Jade Screen, when you walk through it, it actually gives you 12% Geo damage bonus. So that's why in many clips I am running Ningguang, because yes, she's a great DPS, but also when you do her wall and you walk through it on Albedo, you will get that bonus Geo damage, making you just, you know, more powerful. And as I mentioned, double Geo Synergy gives you good resonance and energy particles, which you don't really need, but it is nice. Especially against like single enemies and not just a clump of enemies like you do get in Abyss. Overall though, I recommend having a strong DPS, just your favorite or your best one of any element, and then you want to prioritize elemental reactions around your main DPS, not around Albedo, because obviously Albedo's Geo. So what that would look like is if you're running Razor, you'd want Super Conduct, so you could run someone, just a cryo character, let's say Kea, and then you would have a healer with him. And obviously every healer works well with Albedo. Bennett is obviously one of the best characters, and I think he works especially well with Albedo. Why? Because one, he acts as that healer, but also his ultimate will just give you a ton of damage bonus. Now, yes, you can use this on every character, and yes, he's good in almost any team, but the reason he's so good with Albedo specifically is because since you don't need any specific elements, since there aren't really any reactions that buff his damage, having a character that can buff his damage is just that much more helpful. Another really good character with Albedo is Venti, and I'm probably going to be using him a lot because, one, he clumps up a bunch of enemies, which lets your AoE E and your AoE Q, your elemental skill and burst, do that AoE damage to everyone that's clumped up. And also Venti, by clumping up enemies and dealing damage and spamming his abilities, creates a lot of particles, giving you more energy and letting you spam your ultimate ability on cooldown. A good example comp I could see myself running is Diluc as my main DPS, with Xing Shou as a support to proc Vaporize, Albedo as a support to just do that constant burst damage, deal a ton of damage, and have Bennett as my healer, my Pyro Resonance, and that bonus damage for both my main DPS and especially Albedo. So I'm going to answer a commonly asked question: is Albedo good with Zhongli? This is sort of a yes and no answer because yes, they are good together because they both do a ton of damage and they generate particles for each other because they're both Geo, especially Albedo, who's in alt battery for like your whole team. Giving those Geo particles to Zhongli will be very, very nice, which means he can spam his elemental burst, and so can Albedo. However, it is very rare that you can fit two Geo supports in your team, especially because in a lot of Abyss floors you need like Pyro, Cryo, and Electro or something like that. So it can be hard to usually get two Geo supports, but if you have room in your team comp, they can definitely work well together. It's just a matter of, can I fit these two in my comp, or do I have to pick one? Because they both serve the same purpose. They're Geo supports that do a ton of burst damage, except Albedo is more of an alt battery. He will charge your entire team's elemental burst much faster, whereas Zhongli is more of a shielder, so that's the sort of nuance between the two, but they can complement each other. It's just hard to fit them in a team. Now's the damage showcase section. Now keep in mind before you guys watch this, Albedo is my support. I'm going to be spamming his ultimate. He gets it back so fast, gets so many particles. You'll see some clips of me using Q, then like 10 seconds later Q again, then Q again, then Q again. But I do use different characters in between because he's a support. He's not my DPS, so I will be using like Diluc for damage and then swap to Albedo, do that burst, swap back, and just keep cycling. Keep in mind for most clips there's no food or potions or anything, but I think there's might be like one clip in there where I do use food, and I'll let you guys know. I believe this character is insanely strong, and yeah, let me show you guys. Boom, he already has his ult. And the cooldown's not even up yet. Like, as you guys can see how fast I charge ult there was crazy. And then if I crit here, it'll do a ton of damage. Yup. And it's just a ton of damage. Alright, we're gonna do a full floor 12, chamber 1 clear, using Albedo as main support. Let's go. So overall, he's such a good Geo support, so much burst damage, just constant damage. And yes, the single number isn't that huge because there are 7 smaller numbers that hit after. That's why, like, overall his burst does more damage than Zhongli's, but the number itself is a bit lower. I think Albedo is an amazing support. I'll definitely be running him. He's just crazy and super fun. I'm honestly so relieved that his energy recharge was good. I was really scared about that going in, and I'm super happy. I will be streaming most nights on Twitch. I'll probably be live tonight, if not tomorrow, so go check that out if you want to. That being said, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you want to. If you don't, that's okay too. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.